we're going to change things economically and educationally, the church has got to be integrated. It's got to be integrated because the resources are there in churches that are, I like to call it overserved, and there's not as many resources in underserved communities, and in many of the churches too, where the population is going down. You have a very aging population, and then we have several generations, particularly of African Americans. I'd say at least a couple generations who have no connection to the church either. So I think there's a class issue within our culture, but I also think that the church itself, if we remain segregated, then we won't understand the issues that, we'll say you're the mayor of North Tulsa.
Right.
If we continue to be segregated. I think if we can crack that 11 o'clock hour and get people building relationships and get people, mentor people who don't look like them and engage in relationships beyond work, beyond living, my next door neighbor is, but I don't engage. We begin having dialogue. And I think we have to begin talking about race, talking about the riots, talking about Central, talking about those issues that historically divide us, but we haven't brought them to the forefront. We have to do that in a way that does not alienate anyone. We have to do that where it does not alienate anyone.
Threaten.
Absolutely. Where I may feel victimized or entitled or any of this kind of
well,
thing.
I've heard churches, I've talked to some ministers who, in Tulsa, because I asked that question, of all places, why are churches so segregated? And because of churches rely upon resources. I mean, I know that we had one minister in downtown Tulsa. He hosts the Martin Luther King speeches and the celebration we kind of march to his church, and that's where we have the service every year. And it's a primarily, I'd say white church. And he said that as he did more outreach in the African American community, he actually had some ministers come to him and say, stop. And I would understand that. I would get that. You're going to meet with
white
cannibals.
ministers or black ministers?
Black ministers.
And that was
because I can get that, right?
Yeah, when we first started this project, I would tell Joe, because Joe and I together the grant, and I was telling my biggest fear is how the African American ministers will feel about this project, because, and we all know that the black church is that social institution that black folks still own.
Right.
And but we believe that it just goes beyond, and well, number one, heaven's not going to look like our segregated churches.
Hopefully.
Oh, I know it's not. I know it's not. Maybe only 2 people there because we did not do the things that we needed to do here.
Who's coming with you?
We have this small group to really kind of think about those things, because we're really not looking at structures and institutions. We're really looking at relationships. And so that's been our argument for any pastor. We've had that conversation with one particular pastor, and I had to remind him that the church really belongs to God, not one group of people. But at the same time, I understand that because, it was important for me to raise Monroe in an African-American church, because just the way his world was, I wanted to kind of balance that racially for his own like racial identity issues and things like that, because I know what I struggled with, having gone to segregated schools up until the 3rd grade. But I still believe that people build relationships across culture and understand the needs of an individual, not of a community or a side of town or anything like that, then you begin to open up, and you'll be doing things that you don't even realize that's having a huge impact on someone's life.
So you're going to meet with Hannibal Johnson today.